Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, my number one is a game called Enemy Front on the Xbox 360. It's also on PC and PS3. Have you played this?
Enemy Front. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I heard about it in, I think it was E3 2012, where there were trailers and gameplay walkthroughs, and it looked really interesting. It looked like a World War II set sort of Far Cry. And apparently some of the developers from Far Cry 3 worked on this. It was also notable because Stuart Black worked on it, who is best known for working on the PS2 Xbox shooter Black, which is deservedly beloved, although he is now in danger of being more renowned for abandoning projects that then go on to be absolutely awful, because he left Enemy Front, and before that he left the 2011 PS3 360 game Body Count. Did you play that?
Game of the Year 2011.
One of the worst games ever made, unquestionably. But yeah, Enemy Front. I played the Xbox 360 version. I cannot vouch for the PC version. I'm sure it's superior because it cannot be any worse than this. The game starts in absolutely hysterical fashion with your character, who's a war correspondent, sitting at a microphone announcing that he's going to tell his story over a radio. And it cuts to people literally in the middle of battlefields, cowering over the radios to hear what this American has to tell them, with bullets flying above their heads. Everyone in the game is bearded and wears very trendy leather jackets, and the voice acting is pretty amazing, if only because everyone sounds like they're performing from the vantage point of a Prozac coma. I mean, if you found out that every actor was working for free during a series of lunch breaks, it wouldn't be a surprise in the slightest. And this all comes to a head brilliantly during the finale when you need to escape from this military base or facility
Spoilers.
of some sort. Yeah, so, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole game you're escaping from military bases, whatever. I think you steal some parts of a space shuttle or a rocket or a weapon or something or other, and you have to get out of the base. And over the tannoy comes alarm. Alarm.
Oh my God.
Delivered even less enthusiastically and energetically than that. Anyway, this is a game in which you walk through dilapidated buildings and fields, shooting people, making your way towards an omnipresent objective marker. And there are brilliant breach sequences, probably more breach sequences than there are in the remake of Medal of Honor.
Oh, no way.
Every single time you do a breach sequence, some guy goes, "Ugh," and he stumbles back from the door, which is about as close as the game gets to having any kind of pyrotechnics. Visually, this is an alarmingly poor video game. The cutscenes look like they've been encoded very, very quickly and have used as little disk space as possible. So, I mean, if you ever saw what the first sort of digital round of bootlegged pirated movies looked like maybe 15 years ago, the whole game looks like that. I mean, the cutscenes especially, but when anything moves faster than a snail's pace, there's just a mad amount of motion blur. Anything that's dark is just, again, it's just a block of blur that you can't even see. And
Like
the
video
gameplay,
CDs.
yeah, exactly like that. And the gameplay actually looks like that too. The game runs consistently at an incredibly low frame rate, and it is genuinely headache-inducing. And I mean, I'm not saying that to, a lot of people say that just to be flash, but this genuinely started to give me a headache quite quickly. And the low texture resolution and that very skittish frame rate means it's almost impossible to see anything unless it's directly in front of you and firing. So it's easier to use the radar and just shoot in the direction of the little red triangles than it is to actually go into the battlefield and try and see what you're looking at. Yeah. And actually, textures keep popping in and out. It's not unusual to see trees and large sections of buildings just appear and disappear in front of you completely. And the character models they're honestly not too far evolved from the ones seen in GoldenEye. They've got really angular heads and lifeless eyes, and they move really jerkily. But yeah, the game itself, you have a self-replenishing health meter, but a lot of the time you're sort of next to death after taking one bullet, and it can sometimes take 30 seconds to replenish, which doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're carrying
It sounds like a fucking long time.
it's an eternity when you're hiding in the corner of a room just trying to avoid going back to a checkpoint. But that meter, I realised, wasn't actually a health meter, it's an exposure meter, and it explains how visible you are to the enemy if you're going to make the terrible mistake of trying to play the game stealthily. But it only has two settings, full and empty, so if you're going to try and do it stealthily, you have got a hell of a mission on your hands. So the actual way you know whether you're dying or not is a tiny, slight pink mist around the very edges of the four corners of your screen, which you can barely see. So basically, there is no way of telling when you're next to death or when you're fighting fit. The most disappointing thing about the whole game is that the Far Cry systems that were suggested back at E3 2 years ago are just they're completely They basically don't exist.
Right.
For example, there are a couple of instances where you can scope out an area before you attack it with binoculars and tag enemies so that they appear on your HUD, but they appear on your minimap anyway, so there is literally no point in doing it in the first place. And for a game that touts itself as having an open world, it's not open at all. You're guided by fences and hedges and wreckage blocking things constantly, so it may as well be on rails. I mean, never before has a quote-unquote open world game had a world that is less open than this one. I also don't think that the developers ever got around to programming the ability for you to shoot at enemies that are moving, because throughout the whole duration of the game, I tried gunning directly at running enemies, and then I tried compensating for movement and shooting a little bit ahead of them, but nothing, never. You had to wait until they got locked in behind a piece of cover before you could ever shoot them. And its failure as a stealth game, again, is highlighted by the fact that you can take damage from people literally shooting 180 degrees away from you, not even looking at in the general vicinity. Supposedly, you're sneaking around, and they're firing in the opposite direction, and you're taking damage from them. Also, I mean, you need to have the patience of a saint, because there's this stealth melee attack, standard practice, I mean, in which you sneak up behind a soldier and then press the thumbstick in, and then you sort of grab him by the neck and you stab him, and it takes so long in this. I mean, it takes almost 10 seconds, so that you'd be mad to keep doing it. If you kept doing it, it would double the length of the game. And the frame rate dips so severely every time that you use it that I thought my 360 was about to crash, and I'm not kidding. And actually, this game has the best bug I've ever seen in a game, where a non-player character appears at the very beginning of the game, and says, "Which gun do you want? Do you want in my left hand or the one in my right?" And I picked the gun on my left, and my in-game arm reached in to pick it up off him, and I teleported into the other guy's head and watched him hand my character the gun as my character instantly turned into him, leant against the wall and started smoking a cigarette like nothing happened. Really quite an amazing bug. When you're in combat and you hit something, a little white X comes up to show you that you've hit them, and a little red X comes up to tell you when you've got a kill, but they're completely mixed up. Sometimes you get kills and get a white X, so you think that they're still there. Sometimes you graze them and a red X comes up, so you think they're dead, you walk in, they jump up and they're still alive. And this is a game where things like rocks don't give you any cover from gunfire, but if you can, find a hay bale and you're completely safe. No bullets can penetrate that at all. There's weird systems, there's a slow-mo sniper, like it goes to slow motion to follow the trajectory of a bullet from a sniper rifle, but it doesn't happen, there's no reason for it to happen. It doesn't happen when you get a good headshot or when it's the last person on the battlefield, it just randomly happens sometime. And there's also, it's one of those games that shamelessly, I think on the back of the box, it touts how long it is, whether it's like 10 hours of gameplay or 12 hours of gameplay. And it's one of those games that's shameless. So there's a battle in a church quite early on. Quick, kill the guys at the back. Quick, kill the guys at the front. That takes 20 minutes. And then you go and have a fight in a field. And then you're back to the church. Quick, kill the guys at the front. Quick, And there's a sequence at the beginning in some sewers. And you better believe that you're going back to sewers again later on. There's loads of bits of environments that aren't finished. They're clearly separate secondary pathways that were meant to be used for sort of gameplay purposes, but they lead to nowhere. There was one sort of rocky overpass that I followed round, and it just turned into a wall of grass surrounded by holes in the ground that you could fall in and get stuck, so you had no choice but to restart the checkpoint.
Jesus.
Just elements of the game that are just not finished.
Why does this game exist?
I really don't know. I wouldn't want to speculate, but I think it was abandoned is the main problem.
Right.
But yet sometimes you pick up grenades and ammo automatically, as you do in a lot of shooters, and sometimes you have to stand over them and press X. And sometimes the game tells you your inventory is full when you're desperately trying to survive and pick up some grenades to use in battle, and you can't.
You've got some serious patience to have even played 20 minutes of this.
Don't ask me, and I finished it, I don't know why. I also lost track of the number of times I got stuck on scenery, but I never once lost track of the number of times enemies threw grenades at me, because it happened once, apparently. Despite never seeing an animation of a soldier throwing anything at me at all, at one point a little thing came up saying press RB to return the grenade. So I pressed RB and nothing happened. I ran away and there was no explosion. So I don't even think enemy grenades are in the game at all. And again, there's bits that seem designed to inspire you to experiment. There's a bit where you start on a bridge and there's an enemy encampment across the bridge, and there's a truck next to you. You tinker with it and it can career into their headquarters to confuse them, and then you can sneak around trying to take them out, theoretically, but there's invisible walls everywhere. So you have no choice but to follow the path of the truck that you've just sent down towards them. So it turns into yet another wank gunfight. It's a game that wasn't finished. It was abandoned. There are half-utilised ideas. There's no polish at all. Bugs all over the place, and the gameplay isn't just derivative and sloppy. It's just completely unengaging. It's impossible to say whether underneath all of this there's a good game somewhere, because in its current state it's so agonisingly poor that I don't even think about going anywhere near it. The only people who I think might be potentially drawn to it are the kind of people who are really suckers for getting trophies and achievements, but way too many of a significant amount of the achievements and trophies have to be gotten in multiplayer. And yes, there is a multiplayer mode. There are 3 game modes and 4 maps, and you can only quick match by selecting the map and the game mode, which means that because there's so few people playing it, the only games you will ever find are at the map at the top of the list and the gameplay mode at the top of the list. So deathmatch on this some map. I've put a playthrough on our YouTube channel if you want to see that, because it's quite a thing to look at. But yeah, when you play online, the little red X or white X that appears to sort of let you know whether you've hit something doesn't happen at all. So there is literally no feedback. You have no idea when you're hitting somebody. It's just people running around in circles and just spraying and praying. It's one of the worst multiplayer shooters I've ever played. And you also can't start a game with less than 6 players, and you can't jump into any games once they've started. So it is as if the game's creators did not want anybody to play it. And if you manage to get a game, you will understand why. If somebody put a gun to your head and said, play this game, in that scenario, yeah, probably you should play it. But this is really quite... I don't think at any point in the next couple of years we'll never see a buggier, less accomplished or less essential video game boxed product released in this state. I mean, I feel sorry for it more than anything. I feel sorry for the people who wanted it to be something decent, and sorry for the people who can never put this on their CV in a million years if they want to ever work again. But more importantly, I feel sorry for the people who are going to pay good money for it in the sort of misguided belief that it's competent or even finished, because it's neither of those things. I don't care who you are, a completist, a World War II nut, Stuart Black's mum. If you are thinking about playing this, trust me, just do not hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole game you're escaping from military bases, whatever. I think you steal some parts of a space shuttle or a rocket or a weapon or something or other, and you have to get out of the base. And over the tannoy comes alarm. Alarm.
Oh my God.
Delivered even less enthusiastically and energetically than that. Anyway, this is a game in which you walk through dilapidated buildings and fields, shooting people, making you... Yeah? Okay, my number 1 is a game called Enemy Front on the Xbox 360. It's also on PC and PS3. Have you played this?
Enemy Front? I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I heard about it in, I think it was E3 2012, where there were trailers and gameplay walkthroughs, and it looked really interesting. It looked like a World War II set sort of Far Cry. And apparently some of the developers from Far Cry 3 worked on this, flying above their heads. Everyone in the game is bearded and wears very trendy leather jackets, and the voice acting is pretty amazing, if only because everyone sounds like they're performing from the vantage point of a Prozac coma. I mean, if you found out that every actor was working for free during a series of lunch breaks, it wouldn't be a surprise in the slightest. And this all comes to a head brilliantly during the finale when you need to escape from this military base or facility or something. But yeah, Enemy Front. I played the Xbox 360 version. I cannot vouch for the PC version. I'm sure it's superior because it cannot be any worse than this. The game starts in absolutely hysterical fashion with your character, who's a war correspondent, sitting at a microphone announcing that he's going to tell his story over a radio. And it cuts to people literally in the middle of battlefields, cowering over the radios to hear what this American has to tell them, with bullets. It was also notable because Stuart Black worked on it, who is best known for working on the PS2 Xbox shooter Black, which is deservedly beloved, although he is now in danger of being more renowned for abandoning projects that then go on to be absolutely awful, because he left Enemy Front, and before that he left the 2011 PS3 360 game Body Count. Did you play that?
Game of the Year 2011.
One of the worst games ever made, unquestionably.